In this episode of the Money Mindset Mastery podcast, hosts Jim and Ryan explore financial vulnerability. They discuss family dynamics, money mindset, and teaching kids about money. They emphasize diverse perspectives, community support, and challenge negative beliefs about money. They also touch on celebrity finances, cultural differences in sports, and social media's impact on wealth perceptions. Join them for insights on fostering open money discussions.
Wake up, it's time to rise. Talking money with sharp insight. Jim and Ryan here to guide. Mastering the money ride. Saving stacks and planning dreams. Living large by honest means. Tune in now for the schemes. Breaking down financial themes. Money mindset every day. Mastering.
Well, I'd like to welcome everybody to the Money Mindset Mastery podcast, where I'm your host, Jim Leo, and joining me today is my co-host, Ryan Janot. Ryan, how are you today?
Doing well. The weather is kind of holding off for the winter season, which I kind of like. Allowed me to do a lot of stuff around the house and outside in particular. So I'm spending time with my son, which was amazing. So yes, I'm doing well.
Good. Well, you should be excited because today we're talking about a blog post that you wrote that is going to be going out later this week on our website at tvhfinancial.ca and also tvhgroup.ca and through social media. But we want to talk about the blog post and the title, Breaking the Silence on Money, Embracing Financial Vulnerability for Growth and Connection. Is that correct? That's the name of the blog post?
Yes. Yeah. It's sparked from some conversations with my partner and I, and just the journey that I've had about vulnerability, and especially when it comes to money. And a lot of the conversations we're having with clients around coaching, I thought it was a great starting point to start again the conversation about money and how we can be more vulnerable about talking about this very taboo subject. And how we can dawn some light and maybe hopefully give some people some tools to start the dialogue with, trusted friends and family, that they're going to be able to have more of a dialogue to help them understand their journey. So,
yeah, it seems to be taboo, or at least growing up for me, it was taboo. I would say lately, maybe not as much. I think that's kind of easing a little bit. Part of it's probably social media related. People are talking a little bit more about these things. However, what we see on social media may not be the actual truth as well. I think we're going to talk about that later in the blog post. So let's talk about, first of all, the silence and stigma around money and really understanding the fear and the judgment as to why some people may not want to talk about money. They will with a trusted professional, potentially. But not necessarily with family members or their close friends. So why do you think people do feel potentially judged or uncomfortable in talking about money with family and friends?
Well, I think you said it right, which was the judgment piece. People are afraid to be judged about how they handle money or that they're making money, and the people around them really their own trauma with money or what they've learned through education, through their family dynamic, and making sure that that comfort is kind of broken. And again, we'll talk a lot about having a close group of people that are the people that are going to have those conversations with. You're not going to have this conversation with everybody, right? That would kind of ruin kind of the point and maybe potentially put you at harm's way of people potentially being jealous or taking shots at you. And it goes both on whether you're doing well financially or that you're not doing well financially. But it's about cultivating and creating new norms, especially when it comes to the insecurities about what money means to people, right? I talked to clients and people about, money is, and, for some people, money is dirty and filthy, where we try to embrace that money is freedom, right? The freedom to do the things that you want, create experiences that you want, the freedom to open up opportunities that you might not always have. And by helping and having this dialogue with, an advisor like yourself and me, it allows you to understand a little bit more about where those things came from and how we can set you on a path to potentially have more success down the road. So
I know with, sorry, technical issues here. I know with one of the things that I uncovered years ago is how people project themselves from a financial point of view, right? So sometimes as a newer advisor, I would meet up with a potential client. I'd be intimidated because I would see how, I'd meet them at their office and they'd be in their suit and wearing nice shoes and driving nice vehicles and talking about their vacation and whatever else. And it just sounded like they really didn't need my help. So many times I wouldn't even really present the option of speaking to me about their money situation because to me, at least on the face of it, they looked like they were doing just fine and they really didn't need my help. And there have been times where some of those people would approach me and ask me if I would come to their home to sit down with their spouse and talk about their financial situation. And then I would go to their home and start to dig into their financial situation, and it's a mess. And I mean, when I mean a mess, I mean they're literally a month away from not having enough money to make any of their payments. A lot of them had a lot of debt. So they were funding their lifestyle with debt as opposed to money that they actually were earning or had, right? And I think some of those people would then speak to their neighbor or their friends or a family member who, again, on the face of it, looked like they were doing really, really well. And they were just afraid to speak to them about money because they thought, well, if I kind of expose my situation, maybe I'm going to be viewed as a failure. Maybe there is going to be judgment against me. And unbeknownst to them, the person that they thought would be judgmental of them, they're probably just as bad of a shape as themselves, right? So we tend to not talk about money at all. And that starts from really from a family level growing up. Like I know in my family, we never really talked about money. My mom didn't talk about money. My dad didn't talk about money. It wasn't a conversation that we ever had. Where I started to really understand the family finances situation is when we moved up north to Keswick. And at the time I was working at the local CIBC branch. There was only two banks in the entire town. So my family was banking at the bank that I was working out of. And I wouldn't look at their accounts or anything, but at the end of the week, my branch manager would call me into his office and say to me like, hey, your parents are overdrawn like $600. They need to put money in like ASAP or we're going to have to return some of these checks. And I'd call my mom and say, Mom, here's what's going on and we need some money, like put in the account. And that would happen every few weeks until my mom finally decided to or realized she needed to get a job to help out the family as well. But that's where I really got into or some insight into the family situation, but it was still never discussed. When I'd go home, it was never around the kitchen table, a conversation that we would have in my family. How was it with you and your family? Same thing?
I get the same thing. Not a lot of conversations around money ever really happened. Again, the same thing. At some point in our life, my mom goes to work, but we still to this day haven't really had that conversation. And when I look at my son and being able to talk to him about, saving versus investing and starting to add those again, we did the podcast about teaching financial literacy to youth, and how clients have come and started coming forward and asking for more information, more in-depth things about what I'm doing or what other clients are doing. I guess that's also the vulnerability and what I love about my job is being able to share that kind of networking with clients about what other people are doing. Because there's not one right way, despite what social media is. This is the way you have to do it. That's not true. Every family will discover their own way of doing things. And by embracing in the vulnerability, you address some immediate challenges that that have paved the way of how you understand money in general. And in the end, I think you become more resilient with your relationship, whether it's kids to parents, partners, certain family members, and you understand what matters the most. So I think through that transparency, you create a stronger bond with that close, tight knit group that you have. You build some resilience with each other when a family's going through tough times. I know we're just talking about financial situations right now, but that can apply to anything when it comes to resilience and overcoming problem solving, right? And that really, again, encourages family to really open up about communication and our communication styles. And communication leads to empathy and compassion towards each other, and again, the group that you have that surrounds yourself. And again, we always look at it as personal growth as a leader and in the industry. So we have ways. One tool that we have is our money mindset quiz, for instance, of trying to understand the dynamic of a family and how each partner sees money and looks at money, and you can gain some better understanding. So I think it's important that families, especially partners, that they sit down and do the quiz and read up about each other's profile so you can understand where each other is coming from. And then when you're meeting with us, that's an even deeper and better dialogue. So we have a better understanding, because there's many times that we're in our meetings that we're sometimes a counselor on both sides, right? And again, I will say there's no one right way to do anything. It's about discovering what's best for you and your family. And that leads to a lot of power, I feel. I've seen it in my leadership over the years of being vulnerable with my journey as a leader, the struggles that I've had, the successes. And I think social media, very much, we will always see people's successes. It's the struggle, it's the tears, it's the fight, it's the hard work that I think we need to see more of how somebody got to that place in their journey. And that, again, I will always go back to that, adds a lot of growth and power to somebody's story. There's a lot of great biographies out there that talk about people's journeys of struggle. Of you've heard them of somebody came with $35 in their pocket and truly telling that story of from point A to point B. So
Yeah, going back to the whole money mindset and the quiz itself, I think, and I know we've joked about it in the past, but I actually think it's something that people, especially if they're starting a relationship and looking to get married, I honestly think it is something that they should be doing in completing the money mindset quiz, because you'll have an understanding not only of yourself and your money mindset, but also of your partner. And I know with marriages, a lot of the major stresses has been about handling money. I've witnessed situations where usually there is one of the two partners who are kind of handling the finances. I've witnessed situations where, and the other one would be kind of blind to what was going on. I've witnessed situations where both of them were, for example, spenders. And you can easily tell when we try to help them with a cash flow plan or financial planning process that they live off lines of credits and debt, and they just spend, and they're constantly burying themselves in that situation, that pattern. And then you have the other extreme where you have the couple who they both don't want to spend anything. They want to just keep hoarding the money because they're afraid of losing it. And they kind of miss out on life because they really haven't enjoyed any of their money. And one of them might become ill and all of a sudden pass away close to retirement, and they've missed out on so much, right? So I think to have an understanding of each partner and how they view money, I think is very important. So I do encourage people to come to our website at tvhfinancial.ca, and you'll see that there is a cash flow tab, and it'll take you to the money mindset quiz. And it's a free quiz, and you'll get the results, and you'll get to have an understanding of what your money mindset is. So I do encourage people to do that. In terms of speaking with your son, I mean, he's 9 turning 10, correct?
Yep.
How do you talk to him about money?
Not perfect at it by any means. That's the
Yeah.
first thing, right?
But you still talk about it, though,
Oh
which
yeah,
is better than probably your parents were with you or my parents were with myself.
yeah.
Right?
Well, I think the basics is really understanding we all trade our time for money, right? You know, a parent has to go to work, and for most kids, they don't really understand like why a parent is away, but understanding that that work is creating opportunities, whether it's putting a roof over your head, going on your next vacation, providing food for the table, things like that. So it starts with some of those basic things of just having those conversations of what money is. And with my son, I often give him physical money, again, old school that way, so he can understand how money leaves and comes back. And we talk about taxes and how when he sees the price of something, there's a tax on it. And when he's looking to buy something that he wants, that idea of creating that budget for that short-term goal and starting to set aside and how he can give money to daddy that can invest, and that investment money will then grow to something more versus savings, which is just kind of sitting there. And I would love to sometime bring him on and pop quiz test him during one of these episodes too, to see in his own words what he sees as money, because there's times that he makes decisions not to spend money because he knows there's a larger goal for himself, right? Whether it's an experience that we want to do together versus spending that $2 or $3 at the cashier line up for a candy or a toy or whatever it is. So at his age, it's just introducing a lot of the concepts for him so he understands. And already he's like, I want to start making money. How do I make money? Whether it's selling my toys that I don't use anymore, or potentially helping somewhere in the community to walk a dog to make up a little bit of money so he can do the experience that he wants to do.
Yeah, I think with my kids, what we did was, and I'll use me as the example. Starting the business, I was gone a lot throughout the week. A lot of times I get home at 9, 10 o'clock at night. So I didn't really see the kids. And of course they would ask me, or they'd ask Carol, like, why is daddy not here? Why is he always away? And we would say things like, well, daddy's at work. Well, why do you have to go to work all the time? Now, when I was a kid and I would ask that question, it was, well, because we have to pay the bills. Mm-hmm. When you're 5 years old, you don't understand what that really means. So what we would say is, well, when you go to work, you make money. And they understood what money was because we would also exchange the physical dollar bills as well. So they understood what that was. Mm-hmm. And we would say, and with that money, that allows us to buy food. So when you want to have dinner and you want your chicken nuggets or whatever else, it's because daddy went to work and made money so you can eat when you're hungry. And we would say things like, when we go and buy, you clothes and your coats and whatever else, it's because daddy went to work to make money to be able to buy those things. So we were very specific as to why daddy wasn't around a lot and what that really meant, as opposed to just, well, because we have to pay the bills. Kids don't understand that. Mm-hmm. So they actually, as they were getting older, there were times, and it would touch my heart, where just out of the blue, they would hug me and say, thank you for working so hard. And I'm like, oh, like, why are you thanking me for that? Well, because I know you worked hard to make money, and I was able to go on the school trip, or I was able to buy this new coat that I really needed for winter. And so they really started to appreciate it at a different level, which I didn't growing up because, again, my parents never explained it to me at that level, right? Mm-hmm. So that started, and we would always talk about their money as well, more specific in investing, like you've mentioned with your son. But recently, my son would start to ask me about me earning money, how I earn money, and we were driving a few months ago, and he's like, Dad, would you be upset if I ask how much money you make? And I thought, wow, like even he's like concerned about having that level of discussion, right? So I did say to him, I said, it can be rude to ask someone out of the blue or strange, like, how much do you make? I said, but asking your dad, that's okay, and I'm okay to share that with you. And I remember sharing what revenues I make, and he looked at me and goes, well, when I have my own business, I want to then make as much as you do. Because for him, he equates our lifestyle with the revenues that I generate. So his goal is to make as much as I do so he can continue on, I guess, the lifestyle. And my response was, well, you want to do better than dad, right? I will help you at least get to where I'm at, but you need to look beyond that. You need to improve on that. Not because money buys happiness, because at the end of the day, like actual true happiness, you can't be bought with money. But to your point, it does buy the vacations, the experiences, you need money for those things. So in an indirect way, it does buy happiness, but it doesn't buy your health. It doesn't buy a lot of things that make a person whole and happy, right? But it does help. I'm sure someone who has more money than someone who has no money is probably a little bit better off from a happiness point of view, because again, they get to do more things. They're not hungry. They're eating food. They're sheltered. Like there is a correlation there as well, right? But it's funny because when we're around friends and family, no one talks about money, right? No one gets into the details, into the weeds as to their financial situation. I don't think anyone should just willy-nilly just have that conversation. However, if you are struggling, or if, again, you look at someone who seems to be doing better financially, they may or may not be, but I don't think it hurts to say, hey, like, what are you doing to get you to where you're at? What have you done?
Yeah.
Right? Because I think we all don't know what we don't know.
Yeah.
And you might turn around and say, that person might share with you what they've had to do to get to where they're at. And you might just say, I'm not prepared to put in the 80 hours a week or whatever else, because some people, that's what they need to do. And you're quite content with where you're at.
Yeah.
Right? So it is just to have the conversation.
Yeah.
Really. But it's difficult to do so without coming across being rude.
Absolutely.
Right?
And again, this conversation isn't for everybody in your life. It's about finding the group that if you're struggling, or even if you're having success, being able to share the right part of the story when it comes to that, right? We're not always celebrating the successes, because then people don't learn how you came to that point, right? And said time and time again is like, you can't compare your chapter 1 or 2 to somebody else's chapter 20, right? So that there's a lot of chapters that you still have to experience before you can get to that point. And again, being patient with that and having the right mentorship and the right group of people that are going to challenge you along the way, and also at the same time help support you in giving you the right tools and resources to make those steps, small steps at a time, right? So
Maybe we should start our own little money group, right? Just put together a group of people it's conversational. Maybe there might be some education behind it, but it's more of, just a group of people sitting together. They might be all strangers to each other. Eventually they may become friends, but just to talk about money and their money situation and how one person handles things over another person, right? So that's something we might have to design and set up as a money, just a money group, right?
Money Mindset Network. And that's the thing,
go.
it's a network, right? It's a network of finding the right people. Not one answer is the right answer, but when you have a group of somewhat like-minded people trying to achieve a common goal, then it opens up conversations, and there will be opportunities where people butt heads, and that's okay, right?
Well, that's why I don't think we want like-minded people, right? I think we want people who, because everyone's, again, is going to have a different opinion, a different method, a different way of doing things, right? So we don't want like-minded people. I'll use Caroline as the example. I'm spontaneous and I spend. She's not spontaneous and she doesn't like spending her money, right? And I've said this in the past in other episodes, from her, what I have learned, and we're not like-minded with our approach with money, what I've learned from her was maybe to be a little less spontaneous, to really ask myself, do I really need this thing that I picked up that I was about to buy, right? It actually happened this weekend. The old Hyde House is closing down after 169 years in business, and 40 years I'd see the commercial say, I should go, and finally I went. And for people who don't know me very well, I'm a bag and wallet fan. That's my thing, right? And of course, I walk in, I was like, oh, like it was just, wall to wall of wallets and bags and whatever else. And I had to circle the store a few times, to kind of say to myself, do I really need this? Right? Like I already have a whole bunch at home. Do I really need another wallet? And I went across the street and had lunch. I went there with my sister and my brother-in-law, gave myself an hour to really think through a lot of it. But that's what I need to do, right? What I taught Carol was enjoy some of the money. Don't just keep hoarding it and putting it in your account. We even have this, not really argument, but conversation with our son, mostly because he likes to spend money like dad does. But half of his allowance comes to me as his advisor and I invest it. And the other half is for him to spend however he wants. And then when he wants to spend it on something that maybe is considered frivolous, right? His mom would be like, well, don't just keep spending your money, like hold on to it. And I'm like, well, wait a second. That's why half of it is invested. That's the hold on to it, right? And the other half is for him to spend however he chooses, but we have a difference of opinion there. Yeah. So I think going back to the whole money mindset network, we don't want like-minded people. We want people to have different points of views and experiences so we can learn from each other.
Like-minded, as in, I guess, to restructure that, is like-minded is that they're trying to achieve a similar goal. That's the only kind of like-mindedness. Again, I would say like-mindedness and maybe your values and things like that. And that's about finding the right group of people, hopefully positive and a growth mindset, and that are going to be a little bit vulnerable. I take this vulnerability piece, see my library downstairs of books. I have a wide range of books, from biographies to comic to business to really wellness. And Brene Brown, I'm sure many people have seen the TED Talk that's out there. If you haven't, there's one on vulnerability that I highly encourage. She talks about the first step being you have to have courage when it comes to this vulnerability step. And the second is compassion for those around you. And finally is you have to have that connection with people. And when those things come together, you have true vulnerability when it comes to the people that are around you. And the sense of community that you can really create with the people that you hopefully care about and that are hopefully striving towards a similar goal as you. I know, social media really paints both a positive and negative. And when writing the blog and thinking about how I wanted to go in the direction too, there's some public figures out there that have really shown their own vulnerability. And of course, in some cases, unintentionally because of the media. But I think there was a large portion of like actors and athletes and stuff will come out and be like, I took the wrong path. I had the wrong advisor. I had the wrong group of people around me. And it really humanizes their financial struggles because it happens to everybody, right? Even if you're on top of the world making a lot of money, you make a few wrong steps, it can have a real impact on you. And for those people that follow celebrities, I think it's a real stepping stone as to understanding that, one, they're all human too, and that can happen to any of us. But it also highlights a real need for financial literacy. And, sports stars especially, I've seen it more with them than anybody, or at least it seems because it's part of my world. Sports stars that have all this money and within a year or two of leaving their profession, they're completely broke, right? And there's some great examples of like LeBron James and Shaquille O'Neal who changed the story and narrative of how to create a business, and some important mentors that they had in their life, and followed the right group of people and surrounded themselves with the right group of people that helped make sure that they created really empires. They've created significant brands and empires for themselves. So, and yeah, obviously we know the success stories of people like Oprah Winfrey that have really shown resilience and their ability to continue to believe in themselves and create a brand that helps support really becoming some of the most powerful people in the world when it comes to decision making. So
Yeah,
it just
but
offers a different.
I think the danger with that, though, and looking at some of the celebrities and the sports figures and whatever else, is it's really not the real world, right? If you have a LeBron James who gets wiped out, for example, because he made some bad decisions, he just signs another $100 million, $200 million contract, and he's okay. He recovers from it differently, right? He would recover differently from a loss than you and I would. So I think I don't think we should be looking at a lot of the stars and the athletes because of that, because their path to recovery is a little bit different than the majority of people. Right? The majority of us, we have to work, or we have to run a small business. It's a whole different situation, right? I could admire the work. Like it's funny. I think it was yesterday, and talking about social media, but someone was saying how people are always jealous of what you have, but not jealous of the process and how you got there.
Yeah.
Right.
I think I saw that recently too. Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember seeing that. I'm like, that is so true, right? People are always jealous of the result and what you end up earning, but not the work put behind it, right? So I could definitely admire someone like Oprah and someone like LeBron or whatever else, because they put in a lot of hard work to get to where they're at, but they're in a different stratosphere than the people that you and I speak with, right?
But
I think
at the same time, those are the first steps, though. Like that's the story that isn't talked about enough. Is all the hard work. Like again, LeBron James worked his butt off as far as practice. Kobe Bryant is like, the Black Mamba. That's a perfect example. All the small steps that we still don't fully understand that got them to that point. Right now, at this point, I'm using them as a storyline because they put in so much effort. And you alluded to it before, is like somebody, all of our kids will grow up, and not all of our kids, but some of our kids will grow up thinking they're going to be the next sports star, right? And unless they put in that hard work, like the LeBron James, the Kobe Bryants, or even Oprah Winfrey, things like that, like in the early stages, now we're seeing the end result. And yeah, right now, their story, we may not be able to truly connect with them, but I think their origin story, as I make reference to the comic books, but their origin story has all the beginnings of all those things that we're kind of starting to talk about, and we want people to be vulnerable of having a group. If you're not willing to put in the hard work, then the end result that we are all glittering, glamoring, and love to see doesn't ever happen, right?
So this is our first battle, Ryan, because I'm
Battle Royale.
There's parts of it that I absolutely agree with. The hard work part, like nothing is going to come to us easily. You have to put in the work and the effort, whatever else. But again, using the examples that you're using right now, the one thing that they have that most people don't have is that talent that got them there. Because there are a lot of people who work hard. I know a lot of people who work really hard. But if LeBron James or Oprah Winfrey or Kobe Bryant didn't have the talent in this that they possess, the God-given talent they possess, they'd be like everybody else. So I think hard work is automatic. We know, even when when people work with us, right? When we kind of gauge a client that we want to work with, We look to see, well, here's what we need from you. Here's the information we need in order for us to help you. The ones that immediately provide us with all the information that we need, who will book our follow-up appointments right away so we can walk them through the steps in the process, make the recommendation, they follow through with the recommendation, they implement everything.
Yeah.
They have a higher success than someone who sits there and we're constantly chasing them for information and chasing to book appointments. And they're not willing to put in the 2 hours to gather the data that we need, right? So I think for sure, absolutely, everyone has to work hard at it. But some of us don't have the natural talent to reach the level of a LeBron James or a Wayne Gretzky or whatever else, right? Wayne Gretzky could have, if he didn't have the skill set that he did, he could have ended up being another fourth liner plugger guy, right? But he had a natural skill set. I think if we use sports as the context for us, right, as a comparable, I think the culture of sport is very different. So, for example, you don't hear too many or a lot of bad news stories with NHL hockey players because it seems like from day one, they have people, they build this team of professionals that help them through tax planning, money management, like from soup to nuts, everything. Where from an NFL culture or NBA culture, you do hear more of players who have made all this money and then they lose it all. And I don't know this for sure, but my sense is from what I read and from what I see is they don't quite have the same type of support system to help those players when they all of a sudden win the lottery, because that's essentially what they're doing, right? Is you have someone who's grown up poor all of a sudden making millions of dollars. To them, that's a lottery, and now they're blowing their brains out with all the money that they've made, and they've lost all their money, right? So I think culture, the sports culture, if we kind of compare those, I would definitely say to people, follow more of the NHL hockey culture when it comes to how the players are handled with surrounding themselves with professionals. And you talk about this all the time, right? They have nutritional coaches, life coaches, financial coaches, their coach on the bench, train, like they are surrounded by a team of professionals to help them get through every step of the way. And I think that's really what we're trying to say to people as well is talk about money. Don't be afraid to talk about money. Don't be afraid to ask. And if someone gets offended by it, like you're not meant to offend anyone. But if you want to talk about these things, then speak with professionals because we provide that support that people are looking for. We provide the debt support when it comes to mortgage financing. We provide the tax support, tax planning support through TVH Group and our accounting division. We provide the legal support, the retirement planning support, the cash flow. Like what we're basically suggesting to people is if you are looking for the same level of support that you would see with an NHL player that's surrounded by a team of professionals, then look to us to be that support for you. Or as we say, their chief financial officer, their CFO, right? Let us, or sorry, the chief family office. That's what we say to people. That's who we could be for people. And we can help them talk about money a little bit differently. We can help them with the dialogue, right? We could be the non-judgmental sounding board. I know how many times we've had clients come to us say, I feel kind of bad and I know this is, bad what I did or whatever. It's like, we're not here to judge anyone, right? We're here to help. So share with us what you need to share, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And we're not here to judge you. We're here to help you get back on track and make sure that you don't repeat those errors in the future as well. Right?
Yep.
I feel like that was our first little boxing match there, Ryan.
I don't know. And again, it was a great conversation of different perspectives to understand. And really, when it comes to anything that we discuss, is like no one way is the right way. There's many different pieces that will help somebody out there understand what it is we're talking about, asking of them. The educational piece, that's another big piece. The hard work takes you so far too, but there's the educational piece. We have the resources, whether it's money mindset ebook, the quiz, our podcast, joining the cash flow solutions process and understanding more in depth your behavior, the coaching that we offer. There's a lot more than just simply hard work. It comes to surrounding yourself with a great team. And part of my blog was really kind of simplifying, and again, it will expand. And I always challenge people to create the network, to create the conversation. And I kind of tried to collectively bring it down to kind of five points, which was obviously everything we've been talking about, like normalizing this kind of financial conversation that we're having. Vulnerability happens only happens with people that we trust, and it takes practice, and you will fumble through it, but it's about taking the small steps, and that builds up your muscle memory through it, right? So, and it's going to be awkward. Even as I typed out the word awkward is awkward for me to type because it looks so weird. So, and how the social media plays into this whole process, right?
Because all we see is all the good stuff. For the most part, we see the good stuff, right? It reminds me, social media reminds me a little bit of some of those infomercials. You want to be rich like me, and look at all the boats and cars that I have and the houses and all the girls and whatever else. And, then buy my system. Well, they made their money from selling the system. They really had no system.
Yeah.
Right. And social media is the same. Yeah. A lot of people are, renting a Ferrari saying, hey, look at my Ferrari. It's like, well, it's not your Ferrari. You rented it. Yeah. Right. But they're trying to project themselves to be wealthy or successful. Right. The majority of the people that we know, they're not driving Ferraris. They're good old fashioned, everyday, hardworking people who are just trying to build a reasonable lifestyle for themselves, for their family, making sure that they're comfortable when they retire in the future. So we're not here to show people how you can make money so you can buy a Ferrari or mansions and own your own jet plane. That's not who we are. That's not what we're here to do. We're here to just let's have the conversation. Let's talk about money. What are your goals? I know sometimes we talk about needs versus wants, and there's different opinions. And sometimes your position is, well, you don't need that, right? But you want, you don't, or you need this, or you don't want that. Like, you and I kind of sometimes have a different opinion of it. Doesn't mean that I'm right or you're right. It's just that's what works for you. And this is the benefit of people working with you and I together, right? Mm-hmm. It's because we present sometimes different angles from each other. And a person could sit there and say, I can take a bit of each. It makes sense. Or I relate more to one over the other. I know that when we've had meetings with my partner, John, on the mortgage side, and we talked about financing and retirement and building wealth, sometimes we would have a position, and then he would share his position, and we'd be like, never really thought of it that way. Yeah. Let's explore that a little bit more. This is why we need to have the conversation, the dialogue.
Yeah.
Because we'll learn from each other.
Yeah. And
right? Just don't listen to your partner or your neighbor who says, go and put all your money in Bitcoin. Just don't do that.
Well, and this is the second part, which is sharing those stories, sharing those personal stories that help understand. And then the third was educating and empowering people through financial literacy. We have the tools to be able to help support. As I said, the podcast, you can reach out to me about talking about different books that I've read, because I have a library downstairs that we use. And just really, there's a lot of great information out there if you find it in the right places and programs that help the financial literacy. And just as we've talked about right now, is just challenging each other's beliefs and making it talk about money. And that simply is what it is, right? And not only challenging, but challenging negative beliefs. I think that's part of the mindset piece, right? Is, by simply believing I'm not good with money is a negative belief that just perpetuates the same feeling, right? The same with people's feeling, well, money is evil, money is dirty. That is just perpetuating the challenge of that negative belief, which, as the universe, as I've learned with the universe, will continue, right? And that continues on to the group that we have. And then the fifth and final was finding a supportive financial community. And as you said, starting a network, starting maybe a community, a discussion of people that are looking for a like-minded goal, but not necessarily like-minded, that will help encourage and prioritize what is most important with your financial journey, right? And there's lots of mentorship opportunities out there. We have our coaching with cash flow that we offer people to, that really helps individuals and groups. Again, sometimes we jokingly say we go through couples therapy with couples when we go through this journey too, but we offer this to financial groups too. I know there's groups of teachers that are looking to find our support in this and the financial journey that we're helping not only themselves, but their students too. So find those right communities out there. So,
Yep. So I'm not. We're gonna wind this up shortly here. I'm not a big book reader. I'm definitely doing a lot more audiobooks now. I'm better at listening than I am at reading. But some of the books that I did read that I do encourage people to at least consider if you're looking for some education. And I'm not making any money from making these recommendations. There's no sponsorships. This is just me saying these books helped me kind of shift my mindset. One of them was Rich Dad Poor Dad, the original. That definitely shifted my way of thinking. So something to consider. Anything from Warren Buffett, quite honestly. How he started his history, how he became the Warren Buffett of today. Anything related to Warren Buffett, I've read a few of his books, and it's something to consider. Ben Graham, I believe, is another one. I forgot the title, but also I believe there's some connection there with Warren Buffett as well. So those are just some that I would encourage people to consider to either read or listen to. Ryan, I know you're a reader and you have a library of books. Do you have a top 2 or 3 that you'd like to recommend?
Rich Dad Poor Dad would have been one of the very first books I read. Anthony Robbins has a new book that I can't think of the name of right now, but there's also one called The Psychology of Money, and then there's a book called Mindset. And it works through a lot of other things besides just finances, but it's just mindset of life. And I still am reading this book ongoing because forever trying to grow when it comes to my own mindset and supporting my son, my family, my friends, clients, things like that. So, financial vulnerability is like probably one of the biggest things that I see. I've always joked about the financial wellness circle out of people's wellness. The financial side doesn't seem to be taken care of, but I think one of my final thoughts is really like looking back on your life many years from now. Would you determine that the struggle you're currently wrestling with right now, was it worth it? And know that it's your call to make how you want to change it. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think it's time to put another one to bed here, Ryan. So if you're looking for some additional information, again, look out for Ryan's blog post. It is going to go out later on this week. So we will be posting that across social media. We do also send it out through our newsletter, our Money Mindset Mastery newsletter. So if you'd like to register for that, let us know, and we can add you to our newsletter list as well. But look for us at tvhfinancial.ca, tvhgroup.ca. We can be emailed at financial@tvhgroup.ca. Ryan, I'm going to say the number 647-727-4668. And obviously, again, all the social media platforms on YouTube, podcast, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and finally TikTok. So Ryan, looking forward to getting this blog post out. I think it's something that people should definitely be reading as a starting point to educate themselves. And I encourage everyone to reach out to us if they have any questions or just want to talk about money. And who knows, we might end up starting a money mindset networking group just so we can get together, however often we need to, and ask about money and what people do and what each other does about money. So anything else you want to add to that, Ryan, before we shut her down?
Perfect. Let's shut her down. Thanks.
Awesome. All right. Thanks. And until I think next week, we're going to have another episode. So look out for that as well. All right. Take care, everyone.
Why is it